We'll go ahead and begin. It's 1:35. This meeting of the Metropolitan Area Planning Agency Board of Directors will be conducted in compliance with the Nebraska statutes of the Open Meeting Act. For reference, the Open Meeting Act is posted on the wall of the boardroom. Let's start with a roll call.
Supervisor Scott Belt. Commissioner Angie Brewmeister. Here. Mayor Rusty Hyde.
Here.
Mayor Doug Kindig. Commissioner Chris Rogers. Councilmember Bob Rowe.
Here.
Supervisor Carol Benton. Here. Mayor Matt Walsh.
Here.
Oh, and Mayor James Stothard. Jacqueline Morrison from here, so.
Okay, good enough. Let's go with B, approval on the agenda. May I have a motion?
Second.
Need a motion and second? Roll call?
Brewmeister. Yes. Hyde.
Yes.
Bloomingdale.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Morrison. Yes. Benton.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
All right, C, board minutes of the December 14th, 2023 meeting. This is an action item. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Roll call?
Brewmeister. I'll abstain. Hyde.
Yes.
Bloomingdale.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Morrison. Yes. Benton.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Go on down to D, agency reports and presentations, information. Mike, you want to start?
Sure, and so just one staffing update here to begin. Announced last month that Josh Corrigan, our GIS coordinator, had taken a new position and left us after 10 years. I wanted to announce today that Owen Stuckey, our former GIS analyst, has actually been promoted to that position internally. And so we're excited to have Owen take that role. It's really kind of a key role for MAPA here as part of our regional collaboration and all the work that we do, supporting member agencies and doing planning around the region. But Owen's been with us for 8 years, I think now. And so brings a lot of continuity to that role, and we're excited about that. Owen will be back next month to present on our traffic reports, which are kind of a big project that MAPA is, and will be announced next month. So welcome, Owen, to your new role.
Welcome on.
Thank you. We do a kind of a news update. If you listen to public radio here in Omaha, you may have heard me kind of on back-to-back days talking about some of our initiatives for the next year. We've been trying to, as part of our strategic plan, get the word out about what MAPA does on an annual basis. And so we put out a call to some of the news stations and radio stations to kind of say, hey, here's what we're working on. Here's some projects that MAPA is supporting around the region, and KILS took us up on it. So just talking a lot about some of the planning work we're doing, regional collaboration, all the types of things that MAPA gets brought into. So if you want to check those out, you can online. They're available now. One project that I've mentioned before through our partners at the Economic Development Administration is this technical assistance program called Equity Impact Investments. You probably heard a lot more about technical assistance from me over the last several months because the federal government has a lot of opportunities coming out. The Latino Economic Development Council, which is based in South Omaha, kind of really looking at supporting business growth and development down there, reached out to us about this. It's really kind of technical assistance getting through EDA staff and this organization called Engine, or the New Growth Innovation Network, about really leveraging economic development opportunities that are available for philanthropic, state, and federal resources. And so kind of a new opportunity, a lot of webinars over the fall to kind of get ourselves into what's called phase 2. But we see a lot of opportunity to really build on the North and South Omaha ARPA work, some of the investments that are going to be made here over the next coming months, and really kind of building a more sustainable model of economic development. It aligns really closely with what we have in our comprehensive economic development strategy, and really provides a lot of resources that we wouldn't be able to tap into otherwise. So excited about that and that work coming up, as well as leveraging the 24th Street BRT project that's connecting North and South Omaha, and some of the work that Metro Transit will be doing over the next couple of years. We have a brownfields workshop coming up next week, I guess, and we did have to move the location of this, and I caught the adjustment on social media. There was a water main break in Carson, and so we're moving it to the Trainer Community Center. But this is really connecting our partners in Iowa to resources that are available through the state of Iowa and through EPA Region 7 out of Kansas City, and really kind of showing them the breadth of resources that are available. We get a lot of comments about dilapidated properties and old service stations and things like that. And really, there's a whole spectrum of tools and funding sources available both to local governments and to private developers. And so we're hoping to connect folks to that on the Iowa side of the river. We had a similar effort in South Omaha last year, and we had really great attendance and some follow-up on some of those initiatives, but trying to connect some of those smaller rural communities to those same opportunities as well. We talked a little bit about the call for projects back in October and December. So this is our, at this point, biennial, kind of every 2-year call for projects on our federal transportation dollars. Wanted to give you a brief update. Our applications were due for this program back on January 12th, at over $130 million worth of requests. We have not $130 million to allocate to projects, and so there will be some key decisions there by our committees and ultimately recommended to the board. But wanted to let you know that public comment on those submitted applications will be going out here in February. There's an online survey, and our team goes out and connects with community groups who have an interest in this. And just getting the word out about really what requests are being made. Ultimately, that goes back to our committees to make that funding recommendation to the board. And ultimately, in June of this year, we'll have our final transportation improvement program, which kind of makes those awards that we'll announce to members over the summer. So thanks to the transportation team. Again, like I think 2 years ago when we did this, we had over $250 million or nearly $250 million worth of requests. Still seeing that high interest and high demand for these programs on the transportation side of things. And then finally, maybe not finally, maybe there's one more after this. The March Council of Officials meeting, we've done this in the past where we've had a legislative update from our kind of 2 lobbyists, one of them that MAPA hires directly through Kissel Coho for the Nebraska unicameral, and John Murphy, who is our statewide association lobbyist on the Iowa side, to give some updates kind of mid-session to MAPA's Council of Officials. We'll be hosting this at the venue at the Highlander on March 13th. We'll also then, as we'll talk about in the budget schedule here a little later, go through the MAPA member survey results and our work program priorities. And so hopefully an interesting meeting. It's usually pretty interactive. People have questions, but it's a good opportunity for our members to connect and hear about what's going on both sides of the river in our legislative bodies. And that's my executive director report. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. Great, thanks, Mike. Are we on
We are on D2.
staff recognition?
Yes, so we get to do this well, more frequently now because we have a lot of staff kind of reaching some of these milestones, but I'll start with Grant. Grant, I'd like to recognize him for 15 years of service here to MAPA, and he's one of the maybe MAPA pipeline stories. He actually started at MAPA as an intern, left for another position, I believe, and then came back ultimately as a planner, and has kind of really helped us be our community and economic development department and those services here over the last 15 years. So he is the elder statesman of MAPA. He beat by about 4 years in terms of his work here at MAPA, but really got promoted to his role about 2 years ago now, 1.5 years ago now, to lead that department, and really just excited about the work that we were doing and serving our communities directly through our Council of Governments function. So congratulations to Grant. Thank you. You can make a statement if you'd like.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the recognition. I don't think I have any profound words of reflection. I think my longevity here has been rooted in just the good people I've had the opportunity to work with in my time here. So, and the very sometimes eclectic nature of the work.
Is that it? Nothing else. And then also recognizing Sue Cutsforth, our public information officer, with 10 years of service. So Sue joined MAPA just shortly after I did and kind of assumed what was at that time a relatively new role. And really, even before we had a strategic plan that said MAPA should get a lot better about communicating what we're doing, get out in the media, talk about, what the impact of it is. And she's really been a transformative piece of that from the start and really kind of helping us refine that as we've gone through the process of trying to figure out how do we tell the story of MAPA and what our members are doing. So Sue, thank you for all that you've done and
Thank you very much. It's gone by in a flash, honestly, the time here at MAPA, and I really appreciate being involved in the work that we do and being part of the great team of everybody here at MAPA. Thank you.
This makes me so proud when Mike gets to do this to our MAPA family, because this makes you realize they want to stay. And so we're doing something right. And I don't think it's very dull. So if you are running out of things to do, this isn't the job or the organization. So kudos to you guys that are here this long and many, many more years. Thank you.
So moved from Bellevue to Council Bluffs.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
And you're with a great board. It's all that comes out. All righty, public comments. There are none. Let's go on with the consent agenda. This is an action item.
Second.
Roll call.
Brewmeister,
Yes.
Height,
Yes.
Bloomingdale,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Morrison. Yes. Benton.
Yes.
Yes.
F1, the finance committee minutes of January 7th. Oh, we did all that. Okay, then we go on down to old business. The resolution 2024. Transportation Improvement Program amendments.
Oh.
I
You got it. It's green, it's green, all right, good. It's weird being on this side.
know, yeah.
All right, so a pretty straightforward tip amendment, almost all of these changes, they don't really impact MAPA specifically, most of them are state DOT directed projects. There's one project from Iowa DOT and 3 projects from Nebraska DOT. I do want to note though, at the top of the changes, we are making some adjustments to the language within the tip related to tip amendments. The language didn't properly call out exactly what the threshold for tip amendments for Iowa side projects were, so we're just clarifying that language. It really doesn't impact much, it just kind of lines us up better with the Iowa DOT guidance around tip amendments. And then for the actual changes, there's no actual impacts to any of MAPA's programs, and none of the regional funding is being impacted. It's all adjustments to state DOT projects. So Iowa is increasing some of the funding on one of their bridge deck projects on I-80. And then there's the 3 NDOT projects. They're basically doing some adjustments to some of their I-480 bridge projects. There's some changing some of the funding for repainting, as well as changing the funding source on their Nebraska 50 at N31 intersection project. They're switching it from they're switching it from surface transportation funds to safety funds. Again, none of this impacts our regional program, so it's all fiscally constrained at the state level. We don't actually have an official recommendation from TTAC. We didn't have quorum at the meeting, but the fact that it doesn't really impact our regional program kind of, nobody at TTAC, I guess, had any, heartburn about the changes. So there's no official recommendation, but staff is recommending approval of.
Okay. And we don't need it was an action item. Okay. Roll call, or motion first. Sorry.
Move.
And a second?
Second.
Forget it. Roll call?
Brewmeister.
Burmeister.
Yep.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. Height,
Yes.
Bloomingdale,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Benton.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. All right, we go on down to the new business. Mike, how about a 2025 budget?
Sure, so we've got our schedule here for our FY25 budget on your screens. I'll just kind of go through this month by month and talk a little bit about our budget development process. So, we find ourselves here in January, and the next item here on the agenda is the county fund request, which was approved by our finance committee and will be coming to you as an action item here today. In February, we'll come back with our annual member survey results. So this is something that we start in the fall, really kind of going out and affirming some of MAPA services, understanding what needs are, and we've refined that over the last couple of years. One, to generate more responses from our members, but then also making it a little bit more targeted that we're not just asking open-ended questions, but people can, you know, kind of tick a box and get a follow-up from staff on a particular topic. So that's proved to be very useful for us. In March, we get our targets from Iowa DOT and Nebraska DOT. We actually already have our targets from the Nebraska side. And we submit a draft unified planning work program. This is kind of the statement of work for our transportation planning activities. And then also at the council officials meeting that I highlighted earlier, talk about our work program priorities, talk about that member survey update, and really what those guiding principles are for the work ahead for MAPA in the upcoming fiscal year. In April, we come back with, or I shouldn't say in April, we actually take all of the draft documents, we go to the state parties, we have a public comment period, we get all of that feedback in the month of April. Ultimately, for our finance and board, we take our preliminary budget items, so we actually break out and have a more detailed agency-wide budget around the fund budget, the line item budget, and the program budget, which are really kind of three different views on the same way that MAPA operates. And then ultimately, we will have an update or refinement to our strategic plan as well, which the board approved kind of 5-year framework. We update that annually with those kind of strategic directions to make sure that we are making progress towards those 5-year goals. In May, we have a recommendation of that final work program, that statement of our transportation planning activities for our federal funding on that side of the item, or on that side of our operations. And then also have our final budgets, both the funds budget, line item budget, and program budget that come back to the board of directors. This is also the time where the board will take action, typically as part of the budget, on the recommendation of our cost of living increase that'll take effect on July 1. And in addition to kind of the merit pool available to me as executive director to allocate out for performance and adjustments throughout the year. And then finally recommending those unified planning work programs and a community development work program, which is the other side of our planning activities as well. In June, then we do have the council of officials take action on our sort of our agency budget and unified planning work program and our strategic plan, really kind of just affirming those things for the upcoming fiscal year. And then in June and July, we really get into executing. We get our program agreements and planning agreements from all of our federal partners. We start doing those pass-through agreements, those agreements that we have with many of our members to support things that help our regional planning process across the region. And then also updating our fee schedules and salary schedules. So really allowing us to intake that cost of living adjustment, kind of the new cost for our positions, and really kind of setting those things for the fiscal year ahead as well. So that's the budget schedule. Any questions on that? Otherwise, I can take both of these together, or we can separate them, however you'd like to do that, Chair.
That's fine, put them together.
Okay, any questions on the budget schedule?
Sounds good.
Okay, so we'll present this each month, just kind of updating the status
I like
of
that.
where we are in all of this. And then, as I mentioned, we have the county dues request. And so over the last couple of years, we've been trying to update a little bit about how we do MAPA's dues request and kind of the approach that we take. We had some good discussion at Finance Committee about this. You'll note that the shaded area there in red is slightly higher than where we had been kind of in the intervening years. Talked a little bit about this at Finance Committee. You know, some of what we've done over the last couple of years is really trying to understand you know, the baseline of funding in sort of the post-COVID years of the agency. We've got a lot of federal funding that came into the agency through EDA and other partners that supported staff and really maybe underrepresented our need for dues for several years. And that's why we've ended up with a large cash reserve that we talk about kind of during our annual budget process. But ultimately, kind of the baseline staffing level of MAPA and some of the programs and services that we've been maintaining are really reflected by this. This is an arrears-based approach, and this is something, again, kind of new, but we're hopeful that it'll be useful for the board and kind of understanding MAPA's budgeting process on an annual basis. So this is actually based on our actual costs from FY23 and our audited financial statements. So kind of with that operating budget and the cash reserve that we have, we're able to essentially float all of the sort of cash flow that we need on an annual basis to operate the agency, and then our dues can kind of be equivalent to what we've actually needed. So if we do better and perform better at either doing contracted service or grant funds to offset those dues, those will be reflected in future dues requests from our member agencies. So it's a little bit more responsive, and it doesn't get us into the situation that we had in COVID, where we're keeping sort of a baseline dues number and then really having federal funds essentially supplant a lot of the need for those dues banking them, not putting them into action. That's not a position that we want to be in. And so we're hopeful that this will allow the board to really have a direction over what that budget reserve is able to do. And really, again, we put that into action a few times here over the last couple of years. But we're hoping this is part of a broader budgetary framework that puts really the board kind of squarely in control of all of that. So this comes with a favorable recommendation from the Finance Committee with the direction really to reach out to those county administrators, county commissioners and supervisors to go through kind of this same kind of discussion. We started those conversations. And we will be doing that as we get to those draft budgetary documents here in April as well. So happy to answer any questions on these.
Is that increase similar to recent years? I mean, is it fairly consistent?
It has been this for several years.
It's been flat, and I mean, part of that, and this is the discussion that we've been having with the board and the finance committee, is it's really difficult for MAPA to project forward what's gonna be coming into the agency. And so during the COVID years, what had happened is that we kept our dues the same and didn't end up needing them, so we ended up with this large cash reserve. We restricted that last year to say, we really want the board to tell us what to do. We don't just want kind of this slush fund there. We're gonna put this into action where the board directs us to. But it also gave us the flexibility, having that larger cash reserve, to not need dues right now. We can actually look back and say, well, what was the actual operating cost of MAPA? Kind of do this arrears-based approach and really only take dues for what we actually need within the district. So it's a little bit more responsive. It's a little bit backwards in some ways, but it's just given the nature of the grant funds that we deal with, it's very difficult for us to come up with a number that puts us in a position where we can say we're only taking what we need, but the large cash reserve that we've generated over the last couple of years gives us this flexibility. So it is larger, but this also reflects major cost of living increases that we've seen over the last couple of years. Those weren't reflected in past dues requests. Any other questions?
Great job. This is an action item. May I have a motion? Second,
Second.
roll call.
Brewmeister? Yes. Pike?
Yes.
Bloomingdale?
Yeah.
Rowe?
Yes.
Morrison?
Yes.
Benton?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
I will say, if you're gonna vote as a county board of commissioners, or any county board of commissioners, you have one of the legislature and chair.
Yeah.
That's that.
Yeah, I have a meeting with Chairman Garcia tomorrow to kind of start that conversation.
Word. Hmm.
All right,
Moving right along, the resolution 2024 of the safety performance, Jim.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Hi, Jim.
Hello. I'm gonna go over it quickly again, that's on your set our federal performance measures for safety. And we have 4 new targets established. We'd like to present that the targets are on the left-hand side of your slide. So we set targets for 5 measures. These are 5-year rolling averages. We take a look at both the crashes and serious fatal and serious injuries that we do experience within our region, and also take a look at kind of measuring that against the number of miles traveled within the region. Our target setting
Hey,
process.
Jim, we're
Yes.
behind you.
this
Okay.
light's not responding here.
All right.
Just a minute.
There we go. Yes.
You want to be on the resolution?
I did have some slides, but I can definitely start the resolution.
It might be in the. The board folder on the Google Drive.
And that's fine.
You were in there.
Yeah, I think that was
I've got
the
it.
resolution. Yeah, I can definitely speak to the resolution.
Maybe.
You just had it up.
Okay, I don't think it's not going advancing past this page, so I don't think they're attached here.
Okay.
Christine, if you go up before the staff report, that table at the end there is what?
Yeah, I know he's got some slides, I think.
Oh,
but-
there's slides.
Yes. Jim, I
My
think-
apologies.
I'm sorry,
That's fine, that's fine.
can you just tell me that, is it? Safety slide. That's not it. I'll go to the resolution.
That's fine. All right, so we will be setting targets for these 5 measures, fatalities. Fatality rate is that number of fatalities divided by the vehicle miles traveled in 100 million vehicle miles, serious injuries in a corresponding rate, and then we look at serious injuries. The 2022 baseline is set is that first column, that is what we did experience in 2022. And the targets, the projection targets are taken from material we provided to the board with our Safe Streets and Roads Ball resolution last year, basically just looking at a path towards 0 fatalities and serious injuries by 2040. So those targets are taken directly from that. These targets were reviewed by the MAPA Safety Committee earlier this month, and they went to TTAC, and as Court mentioned, there's another forum, so we don't have an official position, but TTAC remains supportive of our safety activities that we are working on, and happy to take any questions, but these would be our proposed targets for 2020.
Jim, do you want to just characterize some of the trends on some of these measures, since with the slides really
That's
just
a
had
good
kind of the downward trends and upward trends on some of these things?
So we had come to the board a traditional way of looking at safety, particularly the 5-year rolling average, is just to look at a trend line. Our fatalities are still trending up slightly over the past 5 years, although we did see some downturn. So the targets that we're setting are aggressive for fatalities, but I don't think unmanageable based on what we've seen over the last couple of years. Fatality rate's more difficult because we did see the downturn in traffic in 2020, and what that does is it has an inverse response that basically brings our fatality rate way up. The way that those rates turn, again, we would be experiencing a fatality rate that's higher than the targets that we're setting. Serious injuries has been good, and then we've been through a steady decline just as nationally. So our trend line and our projected targets that you see here are pretty much in line. They fall right on top of one another, as well as the serious injuries rate. The non-motorists is the most difficult. We do experience a much smaller number of fatalities and serious injuries, and kind of from a statistic standpoint, that's more difficult to follow, but a lot of our member jurisdictions are very focused on that. So I think if we have things that we can say we're doing that are safety related, I think that is a big effort and positive that way. Those targets I would be harder to quantify, but I would say that they're also realistic. The good news of all of this is we've been bringing these safety targets to you, and we support individual jurisdictions projects, but we're going to be bringing to you next month 2 contracts for our Safe Streets and Roads for all planning effort. One focused on data support to really get a better handle on this and other information that we have both in Nebraska and Iowa, and then subsequently to come up with a comprehensive safety action plan. So that's something the region hasn't done before, and I think it'll be much easier for us to come forward and say, here are recommended projects, and I'll also work directly with the member jurisdictions on activities that they'd like to, whether that's physical projects or policies to improve safety in our region.
Jim, what's the reason of 23 was 63.9 and we're targeting this year
Yes.
down? I'm just.
So this is a challenge. We just took the numbers and didn't apply anything else to it. That 5-year rolling average has a way of casting numbers.
Okay.
We said we took number of fatalities to get to 0 in 2040, and that curve actually extends past 2040 because you're looking at that 5-year rolling average. It also does the same. So yes, in this case, if we were just looking year to year and saying a policy driven by that information that we have at hand, we would have felt lower than we were observing. In this case, we chose it to fit with the curve that was developed from our trend line to 2040.
Okay.
5-year rolling average, once you have FY20, FY19 COVID years, there were a lot of people not driving.
Yeah.
Yes, yep, yeah, and we saw 2 different things statewide, that there were a lot more fatalities even with the lower numbers. For some reason, our community would spare that, especially pedestrians nationally. 2020 was pretty atrocious, and for some reason we were fortunate to not experience what a lot of other states did. Last year, unfortunately, was not our good year, particularly in the West.
You know, data on all the different modes of transportation, like you said, you mentioned pedestrians, you have bikes, you have
Limited amounts, that's very challenging to get, and that's why there isn't a rate for those non-motorists, because we've been spending decades evaluating how many cars are on the road and kind of optimizing the system for that. We don't have similar data that will be a function of this Safe Street plan. That I think we'll walk out of that plan wanting to have more and recognizing it. So I think that localized data collection, the way that we're looking at it now with the safe system approach is maybe for what you can't measure, you can at least figure out what your risks are. So half of what we'll be looking at is identifying based upon the nature of the roadway, things that other communities have experienced. Even if we don't see these pedestrian or bicyclist fatalities, we can at least take stock of our risk and kind of plan from that.
That's interesting. Anybody else? Questions for Jim?
So I know that, MAPA is setting targets, but what are your, what control do you have over helping to get to these targets? What's your contribution to helping to reduce it?
So I would say that the first contribution is for that. Before we went into this target setting, I don't think we had a good sense regionally. So I think that the first providing information to the board and to our members, the next step for individual projects is having usable data and measures for our project selection for our federal funding. So that's one thing that this will provide. But really, the goal with the Safe Streets is we'll come up with this plan with the funds that we have. We'll take a look at providing for some jurisdictions for projects through grants. So the Safe Streets grant that we have for planning also provides money for implementation of projects. And so we'll look to have competitive projects straight out of that plan, but also to take advantage of state funded and other federal grant opportunities. There's talking with the Nebraska Department of Transportation Highway Safety Engineer yesterday that there's so many of them. A lot of the challenges just finding out which one's most appropriate for projects that the jurisdictions may have and helping them prepare for those funding opportunities.
The reason I ask, we just finished the Vision Zero plan, City of Omaha, and so now we're getting ready to set up. We're gonna look at the fatal accident kind of commission, so that every time that something happens in Omaha, we will have a team review it and see what are the traffic improvements that could have been made to help reduce it. And then, so as we're reviewing other models, people have said, great that we know what we could have done, but then what do you do with that information? And so just wondering, are there opportunities to, whether that's seek federal funds or to make something a priority, that's once you know that this is, that there's a place that needs a solution.
Certainly. So for example, the consultant that we're taking on for the planning effort in the last round of funding, we're able to put together a package of projects for implementation for a city and bring those on fairly substantial. It's something that I don't think individual jurisdictions would have come up together, and that would be our goal too, is to identify those regional, ideally kind of lower cost, but that can be applied across the region and put those together in one grant application and look for funding from Safe Streets for all.
The only other point clarification I would make is on our Safe Streets and Rural Roads for All grant application, the City of Omaha is actually a joint applicant because of your Vision Zero plan. And so your Vision Zero plan is actually part of our regional plan. And so we can add some value and some depth to things that are part of your implementation, but then also kind of bringing all the other communities up to that same level of parity, being able to pursue these federal opportunities. So that would be the only distinction.
Anybody else? Thanks, Jim. This is an action item, so I do need a motion, please. Second?
Second.
Roll call?
Brewmeister,
Yes.
Height,
Yes.
Bloomingdale,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Benton,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
All right, moving down to 3, the executive session. May I have a motion to go into the executive director's performance review?
Second.
Need a second? Roll call?
Brewmeister,
Yes.
Height,
Yes.
Bloomingdale,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Benton,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Get out the beer and.
Absolutely. Amen.
Not here.
I just wanted to let you guys know I went to DC 2 weeks ago as the executive board on NARC. We lost our executive or our CEO, she retired. And it was quite interesting. We had a gentleman that flew in from Texas and the other one was inside, Eric Rasmussen. And let me tell you, both of them did a dynamite as so many interviews that I do and I sit on. These guys were polished and they were pretty good, which led us into a lot of discussion afterwards, which led us into more discussion into dinner, which led us into discussion after several beers. We still couldn't reach an agreement, so therefore we got up at 7 o'clock in the morning and there was discussion. And we still couldn't reach an agreement, so we had to all fly home, think about it for the weekend. And then Monday morning, we had a conference call. So through that, I put my foot down very firmly, saying if it's Eric that has been working for NARC for 12 years. And they thought maybe if they would offer him more money and stay in his position, but have a new boss, I said, that is not gonna work. And he did wonderful, his goals are great, and he wants to up the membership and things that NARC needs to improve a lot. With COVID, a lot of them went home, they worked in their jammies, and they got lazy. And NARC is suffering. So with that, I said, well, let's do Eric, like we do with our county employees. Let's do a 6-month promotion or kind of, thank you, and see how he's doing and the guidelines that we'd like to see, and then we take it from there. So Eric is now the CEO for NARC, and he was very excited. So we'll see how he takes it away. But let me tell you, it was hair pulling, and there was a lot of big discussions. So it was interesting. And I want to thank MAPA for always supporting me and having me be on this board, because boy, oh boy, it's pretty exciting. So I really value it. Yeah, it'll be great. So anyway, and with that,